Anyone who spends even a little bit of time around teenagers, whether you're a parent, a teacher, an aunt, whatever, you're probably intimately familiar with trying to decode a sudden mood shift.
Oh, absolutely. It's like whiplash.
Right. One minute you're having a totally normal conversation, and the next you just hit this brick wall. It's sudden irritability or intense anxiety or just as heavy, withdrawn depression.
Yeah, and we usually try to navigate that by just guessing. We sit there trying to read the tea leaves.
Exactly. Like, did they fail a math test? Did they get into a fight with a friend? Or is something much darker happening?
And operating in that fog is incredibly stressful for adults because the stakes feel astronomically high. You're constantly trying to figure out, is this just a normal developmental phase?
That's standard growing pains.
Yeah, or is there a deeper, potentially dangerous crisis unfolding right in front of you? And since teenagers are, well, notoriously guarded, you're making these high-stakes assessments with almost zero visibility.
Which is terrifying. So welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is to unpack a really specific and frankly completely overlooked factor that's actually driving a huge percentage of these extreme teen moods.
It's a massive blind spot, really.
It is. We're looking at the intersection of teen behavior, substance use, and mental health. And we have this fascinating source material, a case study happening right now in Georgia about how coordinated school-based systems like MentalSpace School are trying to completely rewrite the playbook.
It's such a critical intersection. When you actually look at how physical dependency and systemic support collide, you get a totally different picture of what these kids are going through.
Well, let's start with our traditional assumptions, because I think a lot of adults fall into what we could call the binary trap.
Oh, the binary trap is so real.
Right. I mean, we've been conditioned by pop culture to view teenage angst as like a mandatory rite of passage. So our baseline for what's normal is completely skewed.
Yeah, we see the explosive mood on TV and think, well, that's just being a teenager.
Exactly. So when a teen starts acting out, adults usually jump to one of two extremes. On one end, we just dismiss it entirely. Oh, it's just hormones. They're just being dramatic. And then on the exact opposite end, it's unmitigated panic.
Total panic.
You see a kid who's suddenly angry and lethargic, grades are slipping, and the adults leap straight to fears about full-blown addiction or like severe psychiatric disorders. We assume the absolute worst.
Which creates this huge gap in the middle. It's like a check engine light in a car. We see the warning light flashing right in our faces, the bad mood, the short fuse, but we completely misdiagnose the engine trouble. Why is it so easy to miss the root cause here?
Because we almost always miss that crucial middle ground. What the clinical data shows is that in many of these cases, a substance itself is driving the mood. Or, and this is key, the withdrawal from that substance is what's directly manufacturing the anxiety or depression.
But wait, okay, I have to stop you there because that goes against everything we're taught.
It really does. We assume kids self-medicate. The prevailing wisdom is that a teenager starts vaping or drinking or smoking weed because they are already anxious. Are you saying the substance is creating the anxiety?
That is the profound shift in perspective we have to make. We often have the causality entirely reversed.
Wow.
Yeah. If you look at the neurology of a developing teenage brain, it's basically an active construction zone, right? The prefrontal cortex is still forming.
Right, the part that handles impulse control.
Exactly. So when you introduce a substance like nicotine into that environment, you're artificially flooding the brain's receptors with dopamine.
So you're basically hijacking their natural reward system.
Precisely. Well, imagine the teen's brain as a thermostat in a house. Introducing the substance is like holding a lighter directly under that thermostat.
Oh, so the system thinks the house is boiling hot.
Yes. So it blasts the air conditioning to compensate. But then you take the lighter away, say the teenager is sitting in third period algebra, and the nicotine is leaving their system.
The house is suddenly freezing.
Exactly. The intense anxiety, the panic attacks, the explosive anger, that's the brain freezing because the artificial heat was removed. The withdrawal is literally mimicking a severe psychological issue.
That is wild.
Yeah.
It completely flips the self-medication theory on its head. When they say they need to vape to calm down, they aren't treating a natural anxiety disorder.
No, they're just curing the withdrawal from their last vape.
The substance created the very anxiety it claims to solve. So, understanding that totally changes how an adult should approach this.
It has to change the approach. If a parent or teacher comes at this with a purely disciplinary mindset, pointing a finger saying, you did this to yourself, That teenager's walls are going up instantly.
Oh yeah, you introduce shame into that equation, and the conversation is over.
Removing shame is the absolute linchpin of the intervention.
Hmm.
When we reframe this from a character flaw to a physiological reaction, the dynamic shifts. It allows the adult to say, hey, your brain is experiencing a chemical withdrawal, and that's why you feel so angry.
Right. It moves it from a battle of wills to like a team effort to hack the teenager's biology back to normal. But practically speaking, this sounds like a minefield.
It is a minefield.
I mean, if a parent tries to play amateur psychologist at the kitchen table and casually suggests, hey, I think you're going through nicotine withdrawal, they are going to get their head bitten off.
Oh, 100%, which is why you cannot DIY this diagnostic work. Professional clinical intervention is totally non-negotiable here.
Because there's so much going on, right?
Yeah.
Hormones, academic pressure, social stuff.
Exactly. It's all layered on top of each other. You have to untangle it carefully.
It's like a tangled ball of yarn.
Yeah.
If a parent just yanks at what they think is the problem,
Yeah.
they're just going to make the knot tighter. You need a licensed clinician who actually knows how to pull the right thread.
Right, and that diagnostic triage is exactly what modern clinical approaches are designed to do. A professional therapist can look at the whole picture and say, okay, the sleep disruption is tied to academic stress, but those violent mood swings at 2 p.m., that's because they haven't had a vape since breakfast.
That level of precision is amazing. But something that really stands out in the source material is how they involve the family. We usually think of therapy as this isolated thing. A kid goes into a room for 50 minutes and comes out fixed.
And that isolated approach is one of the biggest historical failures of adolescent mental health care, honestly.
Why is that? Why is the family ecosystem so crucial?
Because a teenager spends a tiny fraction of their week in therapy. The rest of the time, they're at home or at school. If a therapist helps a teen realize their anger is from withdrawal, but the parents just see that anger as blatant disrespect.
And they ground them or punish them for it.
Exactly. The therapeutic progress is instantly destroyed. Coordinated care means the family unit has to be involved. Parents need to understand the physiological mechanisms so they can react with strategy, not just match the teenager's volatility with their own anger.
They become part of the treatment plan instead of an obstacle. Yeah. Okay, but let's talk about the logistics of making that happen. Because talking about diagnostic triage and family ecosystems sounds great on paper.
But in the real world, it's a nightmare.
It's a massive hurdle. Finding a therapist who specializes in adolescence, who's actually taking new clients, navigating the labyrinth of insurance, and then pulling a kid out of school on a Tuesday to drive across town, it's impossible for most people.
Historically, yes, the system has been incredibly broken. School counseling offices are so under-resourced. You have one counselor for every 500 students, and they're swamped with college apps and schedule changes.
They definitely don't have the bandwidth for weekly family therapy.
Yep.
Which makes this situation in Georgia so fascinating. Since we're recording this in July 2026, there's this massive shift happening literally right now with House Bill 268.
Right, the HB 268 mandate.
Yeah. Can you break down what a legislative mandate like that actually means on the ground for schools?
Basically, a mandate like Georgia's HB 268 tells schools that the old, fragmented way of doing things is no longer legally acceptable. Schools are now required to have comprehensive mental health frameworks actually in place.
So they can't just hand a parent a list of community therapists and say good luck anymore.
Exactly. The school itself has to facilitate the ecosystem, and that's where models like MentalSpace School come in.
Right. They aren't just an external clinic. They build an infrastructure that lives entirely inside the school. They're doing same-day teletherapy, crisis intervention, suicide prevention, family counseling.
And they do it by embedding dedicated therapist teams directly into the framework. Having a dedicated team, not just some random call center, is a massive differentiator for continuity of care.
And it's not just continuity. The source material emphasizes how these teams are licensed, diverse, and culturally competent.
Which cannot be understated. If a teen from a marginalized background sits down with a therapist who fundamentally doesn't get their cultural context, they won't open up. The therapy fails immediately.
You have to feel seen to feel safe, right? And what I also thought was cool is that they support staff wellness, too. Because teachers are on the front lines absorbing these mood swings every day. If the teachers are burnt out, the net falls apart.
It's a truly holistic approach. You treat the whole environment, and when you look at the outcomes of this clinical integration, the data is just wild.
Oh, the stats are incredible. The notes show an 89% improvement in student attendance and a 92% reduction in anxiety.
And 85% family satisfaction, too,
Yeah.
which makes sense. When you reduce a student's anxiety by 92%, when you help them regulate that dopamine thermostat without shame, you restore their cognitive bandwidth.
Right. Because attendance improves by 89%. They finally have the mental energy to actually go to class. But we have to talk about the financial part, because this is the biggest barrier.
Always.
You can put a therapist in a school, but if the family gets hit with a huge out-of-network bill, we haven't solved anything.
Well, this is the brilliant part of the modern integration. They've woven the support directly into existing insurance frameworks. It's all HIPAA and FERPA compliant, of course, but they integrate with Medicaid and major commercial insurers.
Oh, wait, Medicaid is literally $0, right?
Yes. Medicaid is $0 out of pocket.
Yeah.
That completely removes the financial bottleneck that stops like 90% of families from getting help.
That is life-changing. And they accept a bunch of others too, right? BCBS, Cigna, Aetna, UHC.
Yep. Humana, Peach State, CareSource, AmeriGroup, they've made sure it's covered.
I mean, if anyone listening wants to see how they're pulling this off, they should check out mentalspaceschool.com or even email them at mentalspaceschool@cheattherapy.com. It's a masterclass in removing friction.
It really is. By offering same-day support embedded in the school, clearing the insurance barriers, the adults are finally free to focus on the child's well-being instead of fighting logistics.
We have covered so much ground today. We started by challenging that whole pop culture idea that explosive teen moods are just normal angst.
Right, we looked under the hood at the neurology.
Yeah, how things like nicotine and cannabis act like a lighter under a thermostat, and how the withdrawal physically manufactures the anxiety. It totally flips the self-medication myth.
And we unpacked why trying to diagnose that at the kitchen table is a bad idea and why you need that professional, non-shaming, family-wide care.
Exactly. And finally, using Georgia's HB 268 as a lens, we saw how school-integrated systems are breaking down these barriers.
It's a comprehensive view of a profoundly complex issue, and I think it leaves us with a really vital question to consider. If we as a society truly commit to this perspective shift, if we stop viewing these sudden mood shifts as character flaws or disciplinary issues and start treating them as physiological reactions needing non-judgmental support, how might that completely change the trajectory of an entire generation's life?
That is such a powerful thought to end on, because the next time you see that check engine light flashing in a teenager's life, you'll know that dismissing it is dangerous and panicking just doesn't work. Instead, you can find the right clinical mechanic to safely look under the hood. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.